We all hate it when our favorite show gets canceled, and it is even more frustrating when it gets canceled twice. When this happened with the hit show Longmire after 6 seasons, fans were absolutely distraught. The reasons why this happened are still hazy, but today we're going to unpack everything there is to know about why Longmire was shut down despite very good reception. And we would also be answering the long-burning question, is there a chance that Longmire may return? How did Longmire survive its first cancellation? Most times, the main reason a show gets canceled is because no one is watching it, which wasn't the case for Longmire. The show's second season was so popular that it averaged nearly 6 million viewers per episode on A&E, making it the network's most watched original series. The cancellation had us scratching our heads. Even though the ratings had dropped in its third season, it was not something that should make a network want to scrap an entire show. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the season 3 finale, for instance, averaged 3.7 million followers and a 0.6 rating in the coveted demographic of adults aged 18 to 49. Though the 0.6 rating might seem average, hitting 3.7 million followers in that demographic is a respectable achievement for the show. To put it into perspective, Mad Men's average viewership never topped 3 million, while Breaking Bad's first 4 seasons averaged less than 2 million apiece. So even if Longmire's ratings had dropped over time, it was still relatively surprising when A&E canceled the show. Deadline reports that possible explanations for the network dropping the axe after 3 seasons were that the show's audience were more on the older side, and advertisers preferred younger viewers. The fact that Longmire was produced by an outside studio meant it wasn't as lucrative for the network. So while the cancellation was definitely shocking, one might be able to see how A&E came to the decision. The same can't be said about Netflix, because it doesn't rely on advertiser money. Why exactly did Netflix cancel the show? In our opinion, the show had simply run its course, as most of the material in the novel series it was based on had already been covered. The writers must have concluded on ending Longmire to avoid running out of ideas. The way they ended the show and Walt's story has been heavily criticized by fans and critics. It was quite a conversational ending, though what we expected was an emotional journey that would be hard to watch. Fans have stated that the showrunners jumped the gun, giving the show a very rushed ending, much like we saw in Game of Thrones. The series ended with most of the varying plot lines tied up in a neat way, and a new sheriff, Katee Longmire, taking over from Walt. Probably one of the best scenes we saw from the final episode was Walt Longmire making his coffee. The simple scene had a lot of emotional weight, as it brought us in a full circle right back to the first episode. This touched on the recurring theme we saw throughout most of the series, that Walt always had one foot in the past and one foot moving forward to the future. The ending may have been rushed, but we can argue that the writers ended the series on a high and left some plot lines open just in case they ever wanted to return. Another possible reason for the cancellation are actors' contracts. Many contracts these days are for 6 seasons, and while there's no real evidence to suggest this was the culprit, after all, plenty of shows have run longer than 6 seasons as actors have signed new contracts over the years, it's still possible that Taylor and/or other actors had no desire to sign new contracts to keep the show alive. Shows also get more expensive the longer they go on, largely because of these contracts, so that could have played a role in the cancellation as well. The top brass at Netflix know why they canceled the show, but the thing is, they just aren't saying. Executive producers Greer Shepard, Hunt Baldwin, and John Coveney told Deadline, "We are grateful to Netflix for the opportunity to compose a closing chapter for these beloved characters that inspired lasting memories. Most importantly, we are committed to delivering a dynamic and satisfying conclusion to our fans that rewards their longtime loyalty." What was Longmire all about? Longmire was a Western crime drama that revolved around Walt Longmire, who is the sheriff of Absaroka County, Wyoming. Though the show has been over for years now, fans are still scratching their heads as to why such a good show was canceled by Netflix after just 6 seasons. The series concluded on the streaming app in November 2017, and when we realized we may never see a season 7 again, we decided to take a closer look at why the show was cut off in the first place. We also wanted to find out the chances of Longmire hitting our screens again. The show followed the adventures of Walt Longmire and his small staff, played by his deputy, Vic Moretti, who was played brilliantly by Katee Sackhoff. They mostly investigated the numerous crimes that were happening throughout Walt's jurisdiction. The show had quite a lot of family and personal drama mixed in, which made the narrative so compelling. The show was able to drag us back season after season, each time better than the last. As the show progressed, Walt solved several law enforcement issues in the fictional Absaroka County in Wyoming. Often, he was assisted by his friend Henry. Walt also got to discover the truth behind the murder of his wife. He also knew that she had been murdered, but he had kept the reality away from his daughter Katee. Eventually, everyone learns about the truth. The Netflix original drama series was developed by John Coveney and Hunt Baldwin and is based on the novels of the same name. Longmire has been through a lot of ups and downs during its runtime, and this is not even the first time the show has been canceled. As we all know, the show wasn't always Netflix's property. A&E were the pioneers that brought Longmire to our screens in the first place. Their staple product was quality dramas, and Longmire fit into the mold perfectly. However, things weren't so rosy for them, as A&E announced it no longer planned to produce the series after a short 3 seasons. This effectively meant the show was canceled indefinitely, for reasons which we still cannot fathom to this day, as their viewership and ratings were very good. But can we ever see Season 7 of Longmire? How did Netflix snatch such a popular show from A&E? Don't go anywhere, because we're diving into it now. How did Netflix snatch such a popular show from A&E? A&E tried to shop the show to other networks, and thankfully Netflix came to the rescue that time, allowing Longmire to survive cancellation and go on for another 3 seasons. Netflix cracked down on the show and produced new seasons in 2015, 2016, and finally in 2017. Unlike what we saw with Arrested Development, where the quality dropped significantly after being acquired by Netflix, Longmire managed to improve on its quality. It grew to an even larger audience, making it a widely watched show. Now, with so much success, why would Netflix decide to shut down such a good show? Much like A&E, they announced no real reason as to why they canceled the show. Netflix did not release viewing figures for Longmire, so it is hard to pinpoint what exactly was going on with the top brass during the decision-making process, but we have to assume that they had valid reasons. Perhaps problems related with finances, viewership, or simply the writers deciding it was time to conclude the show. Now it's time to answer the question that has been burning for months now. What was the real reason Netflix had for canceling the show? Are you also dying to know if Longmire could come back for Season 7? Stick around to the end of the video to find out everything. Can we ever see Season 7 of Longmire? Now for the burning question that has been on our minds, will Longmire ever return? We can never know for sure, but we've definitely seen stranger things happen in the past. For now, though, it appears that Longmire is on a permanent hiatus, and the only route we see for a return is for Netflix to give the show a complete revamp by rebooting it or possibly working on a spin-off series centered on secondary characters. With Katee Longmire now in charge of the Sheriff's Department, it would be interesting to see her adventures. A possible Longmire Season 7 could see the return of Robert Taylor as the titular character Sheriff Walt Longmire, Katee Sackhoff as Vic Moretti, Lou Diamond Phillips as Henry Standing Bear, Cassidy Freeman as Katee Longmire, Bailey Chase as Branch Connolly, Zahn McClarnon as Officer Matthias, Adam Bartley as Deputy Archie Ferguson, and A. Martinez as Jacob Nighthorse. Apart from them, many other cast members play minor roles throughout the show. We may never know for certain why Netflix pulled the plug on such a good show. All we know is that Netflix gave a dying series 3 more seasons that it would have not had otherwise. It's hard to stay upset about that. For now, everything depends on Netflix, and we can keep our fingers crossed that something would come up in the future to change their minds about Longmire. And there we have it. Even though this series was canceled so abruptly, there are still a few clues as to why the streaming giant Netflix canceled it. What do you think the new season would feature? We would definitely love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching.